The biggest polluting countries, including China, agreed to limit world temperatures and to make a global goal to cut emissions by the year 2050 before the end of this year. This is the first time developing nations set such targets to fight climate change. The pledges were outlined today in a joint declaration of the Major Economies Forum, a 17-member group made up of the world's largest greenhouse gas emitters. President Obama led that meeting in Italy, where leaders of the Group of 8 industrialized nations were also meeting. President Obama speaking in Italy earlier today. For more on this, let's talk to John Hofmesiter. He's the former president of Shell Oil Company and now CEO of Citizens for Affordable Energy. He joins us from College Station, Texas. Mr. Hofmesiter, welcome to Bloomberg News. Good to talk to you again.
Thank you, Mark. Good to talk to you.
Mr. Hofmesiter, as I mentioned, China and India just today in Italy refused to commit to specific goals for slashing greenhouse gas emissions. What do you think needs to be done to break this impasse?
I think the first thing that needs to be done, Mark, is that the U.S. has got to get its own house in order. If we don't have our house in order, we can't lead from the front. This is not something that we can teach or preach to the world. We've got to actually lead from the front. And I think that's some of what legislation working its way through Congress is trying to do.
And as you know, some of the poorer countries, their argument is they shouldn't have to put their own development goals on hold because of some of the misdeeds of some of the richer nations.
Well, I think they have a principal point that we need to listen to and be sensitive to. Keep in mind, these countries, China, India, while they are developing, they still are mired in serious poverty in many parts of those countries, which we wouldn't recognize in the United States or in Western Europe. And so there is an economic development priority, which I think is of benefit to the entire world.
Well, what does the U.S., sir, what does the U.S. need to do to get some progress on such a treaty?
Well, I think we have to first understand as a society what are we willing to do between the business community, government, consumers, all of the various sectors of the economy. I mean, I think there's some great ideas in the Waxman-Markey bill that should be further produced. But, you know, I still am critical of the Waxman-Markey bill, not because I don't agree with cap and trade. I do agree with cap and trade, and we need a program to go forward. But there are some big gaps in that bill that should be addressed. I hope the Senate will address them, such as we could do an awful lot of new electricity production with zero carbon by reinvesting in our nuclear industry. Let's double the number of nuclear plants in a period of time, for example. Another is the natural gas. We've discovered trillions of new cubic feet of natural gas that is locked in tight shale formations that we didn't really know how to get before. Now we do. Natural gas is a whole area of carbon reduction if we used it instead of other sources.
Now, Mr. Hofmesiter, you know that nuclear component that has been a critical question to try to get answered. You know, one of the things you hear when you say nuclear, folks will say, not in my backyard.
I know they will, and we are suffering from misinformation, disinformation, and lack of information, not only in the nuclear area, but across the whole field of energy. We're dealing with an awful lot of ignorance that has to be, that's why I started Citizens for Affordable Energy. We've got to get rid of the problems with trying to come to grips with these energy sources. Nuclear has been perfectly safe, carbon-free for decades. A revolution took place in America's nuclear energy industry after 3 Mile Island, and there has not been an incident. But yet we still have people who are fighting it as though there's something inherently wrong with it, and I'm suggesting there isn't.
And John Hofmesiter, the founder and CEO of Citizens for Affordable Energy, former president of Shell Oil. And Mr. Hofmesiter, if you wouldn't mind, stay put. We're going to go to commercial break. We have a couple more questions for John Hofmesiter. And we are back with John Hofmesiter, former president of Shell Oil Company, now CEO of Citizens for Affordable Energy. He's joining us from College Station, Texas. Mr. Hofmesiter, good of you to stay with us through the commercial break. And we were talking about nuclear. We were talking about climate change and energy. You said that you believe that there was a lot of ignorance concerning nuclear energy. Specifically what?
Well, I think people are irrational in their fear because the issue of using nuclear fuel to make electricity does not approximate, comes nowhere close, weapons-grade material. So we worry about the prospect of a nuclear detonation when, in fact, we shouldn't be worried about that at all. We should instead be worried about how we maintain that facility.
But, sir, there's always that question of how do you safely transport it?
It's been safely transported for decades. There hasn't been a nuclear incident in this country Because of the issues we discovered at 3 Mile Island, the industry has been through a whole retraining, a whole refacilitization. The process controls that are in place are virtually foolproof. And the people are trained. They are professionals who are doing their jobs in running these nuclear facilities. I don't think the energy industry in general communicates well enough with the American people or with elected officials. I think if there is a sufficient room for discussion, engagement, dialogue, we can penetrate that misinformation or disinformation that's out there and make great progress in carbon-free energy production.
Mr. Hofmeister, if I might, let me switch gears for just a moment. This week, the Commodities Future Trading Commission said they're looking to increase regulation on commodities trading. This would effectively curb speculation in oil. Is this necessary?
I think it's completely unnecessary. It's trying to drive a car by looking through a rearview mirror. And when you look backward and try to judge what speculators have done, the CFTC a year ago was able to demonstrate that the $140 oil price was not driven by speculation. Most of the banks were out of the oil trading business as it moved past $120 to $130 a barrel because it was not seen as a good future investment. People didn't believe it was going to continue to go up. It went up because demand stayed high, particularly for diesel fuels and aviation fuels in the Asian marketplace.
Right.
What really drives oil price is demand and supply. If we're going to suddenly start putting pressure on people who are in the liquid trading market to have a lot of regulations that cover what they do,
right,
I predict we would have more volatility, not less, because it would be a much less liquid market. A lot of money gets pushed around by both those who are trading the oil itself as well as those who are just buying the rights to the oil.
Okay.
And that liquid funding is necessary to keep a stable trading market.
And Mr. Hofmeister, we're going to have to leave it there. John Hofmeister, founder and CEO of Citizens for Affordable Energy, former president Shell Oil Company, joining us from College Station, Texas. Mr. Hofmeister, thanks.